All right, live from beautiful downtown Southern Maryland, it's Gears of Resistance episode number 10. So that's either binary number 2 or decimal number 10. And in this case, it's decimal number 10. This week, past weekend, we had National Maker Faire here in Washington, D.C., which was awesome. We'll talk about that and a couple things about the business. And then we'll go on a little rant that kind of ties back into the Maker Faire somehow. So anyway, let's start off with the happy news of the Maker Faire. Maker Faire, this was the National Maker Faire in Washington, D.C., where I finally got a pair of my Google Glass. I was so excited. It's not quite the Google Glass I thought, though. So it is that Google had sponsored. It was handing out. It was pretty cool. But yeah, it's not quite. There's no electronics. I guess it's a lot cheaper than $1,500 too. So anyway, wow. This Maker Faire was my first. I guess I'd gone to a couple mini Maker Fairs. This was, I guess, was the first real, quote unquote, real Maker Faire or big one or whatever. And it was well worth it. There was big companies. Let's see, Hot Wheels, Mattel. I guess is that a Mattel company? Was there with the race cars to teach physics and science kits with car and racing and racetracks. There was all kinds of government agencies, USAID, the Naval STEM with NAVSEA. There was small businesses selling, 3D printed objects. There were big companies, small companies, or maker spaces from all across the country there. What else? There was congressional staffers. There was staffers from the White House. There was talks going on Friday. We didn't get there till Saturday. I missed the talks. From what I heard, though, they were pretty good. They were a good balance, I guess, in terms of different topics and who was presenting. They had a little, again, mix of different people. And I think that was the best part. It was good to see people that from government, big business, small business, maker spaces, startup companies were all there, and everyone was celebrating the maker ethos, which I thought was great. And out of it, there's a couple people I'm going to reach out to and hopefully do some interviews here in the next couple episodes. There was a gentleman named Bennett Harris who's making science kits called Reinventing Science, which was awesome. Good to talk to. I like the kits. It was refreshing to see, science kits that were like $9 that you buy at Target that you throw away after one use. He's building some really nice, high quality science kits. Let's see here. There was a gentleman from USAID, which I think I got his business card in my wallet, because he was really cool. They're talking about, relying on makers to help. USAID is there to solve, it's kind of like a United Nations, which, well, not like United Nations, but a lot of the stuff that we've talked about before in terms of third world country support and finding high-tech, low-tech solutions to problems. So they had a lot of, we're using kind of like the makers, and we're soliciting makers to help us solve, real world problems without having to spend, millions or billions of dollars. There was another company called Infosys, which was really cool. They were building a lot of their products based on the Raspberry Pi, and they were targeting to do like real applications. So they had things like scanners for your cart, if you're going grocery shopping or anywhere shopping. As you scan things, as you pick things up, you scan it, you put it in your cart. That way you can pay without having to go through the checkout counter. But again, I think there's solutions like that already. But I think, again, it's open source. It's Raspberry Pi. So my thinking is it's probably a lot cheaper solution than what probably is out there already. They're also doing a car parking spot detector. So like basically log into an app and you're blanketing the parking spots, and in real time you can tell where the vacant parking spots was. Again, built with just open source or at least commercial off the shelf kind of stuff. No custom in electronics, which was cool, which kind of ties into where I wanted to go with the rant. So there was, in some of the things I did get to see, some of the discussions and talking with other people there, and some other things I was looking at this past week, actually. So let me tie it in. There's I'm just playing here too. The Open Source Hardware Association, OSHWA, something like that. Let's do it. I think it's OSH. Let's just check this out here real quick. OSHWA.org. Yes, the Open Source Hardware Association. So this past week they put out a couple questions about open source hardware and should there be a certification process so that people know this is legitimately open source hardware. Vice, I guess some people would argue, Raspberry Pi technically doesn't meet a lot of the definitions of open source hardware. And there was discussions at that this week at the Maker Faire itself about, there's people talking about, what would I say, legitimizing the maker movement. And so let me then take this on to my rant. So if you've listened to any of these podcasts or other things I've done in the past, I rail against something called preventing the professional priesthood. So you kind of tells you what I feel about it. So preventing the professional priesthood is the term I give to the idea that a lot of times people have gained some sort of technical skills or abilities or unique skills and abilities tend to close up and prevent sharing that with everybody else, because it gives them either a source of income, because now they're the only ones that can make or do a certain task or a certain workflow. It gives them a sense of superiority. It's kind of like an ego stroking thing, which, granted, I've got ego issues myself, I'll admit. But I think there's this whole idea about certifying the hardware and the legitimizing maker movement, and seems to me to be almost like antithetical to what everything the maker movement is about. The maker movement is about knocking down barriers to learning, to technology, to tinkering. It's about, it's not necessarily, anarchy. It's not, every man or woman for themselves, but it's certainly, I don't think, a place where there needs to be a lot of structure. I think that, let's take Pi, for instance. Okay, so it doesn't meet a certain group's strict definition of open source hardware. Does that mean it's any less valuable to the maker community, to the DIY community, to the people that are trying to learn programming, who are trying to better their lives and getting an opportunity where, without this $35 computer, they wouldn't have had that chance? I think we're better served when we are trying to be as inclusive as possible. And I think going down the road of, certifications and making things legitimate, because I think the problem is that everybody wants, I don't know, I don't really get it because I never felt this way personally, but it's everybody wants to feel like, the work they do is real and it's legitimate. And I'm like, well, what does that mean? What does it mean that if you're doing work, that's as much legitimacy as you need? If you're selling product, or if you're getting people to visit your website to look at your stuff, what more do you need? Why does some third-party stamp give you a sense of, this is now suddenly real? So I argue against it. I say no, 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 no certifications, no things that limit people entering the thing. The problem is that technology from the 70s, with each passing year, every passing decade, technology has gotten yes, it's gotten better, it's gotten smaller, it's gotten cheaper, but it's become less tinker friendly now. Just like my generation or myself is, I really don't understand what is going on in my automobile, because by the time I got to the point of being able to purchase a car, it wasn't just simply gas, spark, air, and you could tinker. There was already embedded electronics that were coated in epoxy that you couldn't see in, and so you didn't really have an appreciation. That's why for me, I don't really understand how my car works, and that frustrates me. But I was in early enough with the rest of electronics where I understand how it works, even though today, and I'll admit, I've got an iPhone, I use Apple stuff, but try to tinker with that stuff, it's impossible. So I'm to my mind is, okay, so we're trying to reverse that trend. We want to make technology something that is accessible, not just from the end use, but someone who can actually understand how it works. When you start going off and certifying and start making certifications, there's not where do you draw the line on what's open source? Because there's a lot of silicon out there that you can't, or you're not going to get as open source. So where does it start and where does it end? If the silicon has to be open source, I'm thinking all the ARM stuff out there, that kills a lot of stuff, a lot of the Broadcom stuff, which again, Raspberry Pi, but everything else from beyond, everything above the silicon, I could take it and rework it again. Arduino's more than Raspberry Pis, but but at the same time, even if it was, the Raspberry Pi being not as open, doesn't, I can still take it and make a product out of it that the people then could learn from. So yeah, you don't learn necessarily down to the transistor level, the VLSI level of how the chip is made, but you have still more learning ability than you would have had otherwise. Than going to Best Buy and buying a computer. I think you've got a little bit more with, even these lesser open source solutions. Anyway, because now I'm starting to rant and go off on tangents. So my point is, to people out there that are in the movement, resist that urge to professionalize the priesthood, to sanctify, to make yourself the center of the universe. Because I get it. There's this need to we want to protect people, which I don't really understand. It's like, well, some people aren't going to buy real open source hardware and they're going to be upset. Well, if someone that's getting to the point where they want to start tinkering with electronics and building circuits on their own, they're going to be savvy enough, thanks to things like Google, to see the discussion. So my point is, the marketplace of discussion of ideas that we have is good enough. That protects people enough than going to create a certification that you can stamp on your board or stamp on your box. Because here's the other problem, having been a bureaucrat, is that, okay, so you have a certification. Well, how do you enforce said certification? Okay, how, if I say my stuff's open source and you're saying it's not, how do you enforce that definition? Lest you involve government and create regulations and laws and rules. Okay, you got to think it all the way through. Okay, create certification, enforce certification, to have enforcement of things like that. You kind of have to go down, in my opinion, a very dangerous road of potentially, does that mean we're involving government and they get to say a part of saying what's open source, what's not? That freaks me out, man. Anyway, that's enough on that. So, but anyway, to everyone who was involved, thank you very much for putting together the National Maker Space, National Maker Faire. I think this was the inaugural. This was the first one. So hopefully next year it'll even be bigger and better. I'm thinking like it would be so cool to do it like actually on the mall, because then you get the through. Not only do you like, because it was at the University of District of Columbia, which is kind of out of the way. So you kind of gotta get on the metro and go there. Whereas if you're in the National Mall with everybody else that just shows up as tourism, you get so many more people. So that would be my hope, is one day the Maker Faire is actually on the mall. That would be awesome. So I'm going to end that down. I'm done. Prevent the professional priesthood. Don't make certifications. It's not needed. Trust people. They're smart. People are smart. They'll make the right decisions. All right. So what else? Anything about the business today? So again, if you're around Radio Shack, as they take their slow decline, there are some pretty good deals to be had. So this past week, and I think my Radio Shack is becoming one of the Sprint Radio Shacks. They're not really shutting down, but for whatever reason, there's a lot of great sale prices on their non-consumer electronic stuff. So the stuff that appeals to a maker. So they're like their electroluminescent wire is on sale for like $3-4. Same thing with their EL tape. So if you've got some projects coming up, wearables or anything that needs lighting, they're really cheap right now. I noticed like circuit breadboards were down to like $8 for like the little 6-inch versions, which were traditionally like $16. Even though you could probably get them on Amazon for like $5. Let's see what else has changed here in the last week. Been tinkering with the Blue Bean a little bit more, the LightBlue Bean. I'm liking it so far. I think it's there's an app that you can program it via an iPad, which was pretty cool. I think I showed this off before at one, but if not, I'll again, it's Bluetooth built in, Bluetooth low energy, runs off a little coin cell battery. That was pretty cool. The Arduino Zero has launched. The Arduino.cc version, which is the company that's actually headed by Massimo and his guys and his crew. They're the Arduino Italian LLC company. Had an Arduino Zero Pro come out a couple weeks, maybe a couple months ago. This is, depending on how you look at it, the official version. Even though they also announced they're going to this whole Genuino concept. It seems like it's classification versus going to be a new name for the products. So if you want the Genuino certified Arduino Zero, that came out today, June 15th. It's running for $49 off their website, arduino.cc. Nice thing about it is we're making the switch over to an ARM-based processor. So we're going to do 32-bit computing. So kind of we're getting slowly more from the quote-unquote amateur electronics into more professional grade electronics, at least on the gut level. The cool thing is, if you're using Atmel Studio, you get access finally to a debugger. So one thing that people haven't been able to do thus far with playing with the normal Arduino, and you still can't do it with the Arduino IDE, at least I don't think you can. You need, again, Atmel Studio, is you're finally going to have access to a hardware debugger. So you can actually kind of like, walk through your code and see how things are progressing, looking at the memory and whatnot. So that's a good potential learning tool for people. It is 3.3 volt. So a lot of your old shields, though the form factor will still fit, if you try to put 5 volts onto a 3-volt pin, you will at least fry the pins, potentially fry the whole board. And you can't just replace the old, it's not like a package where you can just replace your AVR microcontroller. So, just be warned, it's different. It's not dangerous, but just different. What else? So I've been doing a lot of work lately. Finally doing more final manufacturing, and more than just prototyping, where I've been actually sending off to get boards made, PCBs, and for clients. And the problem, so I've been using OSHWA. I've tried another guy, I can't remember their name. And while they are still, in my opinion, OSHWA is the best for when when you're ready to do the final presentation, the final board, the shipped version of whatever you're working on, they're still the way to go. But for let me see here, for prototyping, I finally broke down, and let me see if I can figure this out. Here we go. Got a tiny little CNC machine that can do PCB milling. So curious if anybody out there has ever dealt with this one. It's a company called Inventables. It's their X-Carve. Basically about a 12-inch by 12-inch workspace. CNC mill. And they, on their website, they sell bits specifically for milling PCBs, as well as little drills to actually drill the holes for through-hole components. So I'm just curious, has anyone used this one? What are their feelings about it? There was one at the Maker Faire, a maker space up around DC. They were fiddling with it a little bit. Wasn't quite working, which is a little interesting. And the YouTube videos I've seen, all of it, have been thus far what Inventables sent free. They sent some YouTubers and other bloggers a free X-Carve in return for a review, and all the ones I've seen they've been honest. I'm not questioning that, but they've all been positive, even though there was one or two where it was like getting the gantry perfectly aligned was in one axis was a pain in the butt. Like getting it, I guess, flush level this way was okay. Well, I guess that would be maybe the X, but the Y, getting it that way, because the way it's built, it's a little bit more of a pain in the butt, requiring even one guy to actually went in to re-drill the holes a little bit, which again, then you get into areas of issues with making it precise, and that kind of scares me a little bit. Also, there was some talk about getting and these guys were more woodworkers, some debris getting into the tracks. Anyway, so what I said, I'm doing PC building. So my plan is, what would help me is Green Shoe Garage, we pride ourselves on turning around really fast prototypes. So I needed to the point where I couldn't wait the week or two, or for even OSHWA to get me back aboard. I needed to be able to do the Eagle file, send it to the mill, test it out, make sure it works. Go through, probably, I guess on average, I'm like maybe 2-3, before I really get a board that I like or works. And then once I got that, then I will take the design file. Once I get, I'm happy and convinced it works, then I will send it off to someone like Osh Park to actually make what I would say a customer presentable version of a board. So anyway, thought I'd share mainly to get some feedback from anybody that's actually bought one and is using it, again, for more PCB milling than woodworking, because again, all the people that I've seen thus far are doing it, are using it to do woodworking. Appreciate your feedback. All right, with that, I'm going to end the rant tonight because it is late. So the point it takes away: National Maker Faire, any Maker Faire. If you can get it out to a Maker Faire, it's well worth your time. If nothing else, it gives you inspiration for other things for you to do. Wouldn't encourage you to steal directly someone's idea and product, but it is a place to kind of, if you're in a rut and you just need to take a step back and regain some hope in humanity's future, maker space or Maker Faire is where to do it. If you are a part of a maker space, set up a booth next time. It's amazing how much traction and goodwill you'll get. It was really cool. I think hopefully next year we can set something up either through my work or through the maker space. Other than that, prevent the professional priesthood. Go to your Radio Shack and pick up stuff that if you need it to have it for projects, now's a good time. And let me know if you've had any experience with the X-Carve and specifically for doing it for PCB milling. And we'll be back in probably 2 weeks. Yeah, 2 weeks. We're a little bit off with our schedule, but probably going to do a lot of interviews here coming out of Maker Faire. There's at least 4 companies and folks that I met that I really want to get on and kind of pick their brain before too many weeks have passed and we all forget about Maker Faire. And with that, I will go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you all very, very much for listening. And until next time, I guess I should say keep it steamy, make it quirky, keep it quirky. I got to put something like make in here. I don't know. But anyway, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.